here, though. I get in trouble with the staff because I am always insisting on those curtains being drawn. I feel like it wrecks the vibe to have a ton of sunshine in here. In fact, we didn't discover that or think about it at all the first year we were open until daylight savings came around, and we're about to start the show, and it looked like, it was bright as can be in here, and I thought, this is not gonna be okay. So we got some curtains. Anyway, here we are. It's Sunday, and I successfully got Danny and Carly here on a Sunday, which is already like pretty good. Good job, guys. Good job. And this is our first event as part of the membership program since we renewed that program. So I do want to thank you once again for being a part of that. This is the second year of it, and most of you participated in the first year. And to you, I say thank you for doing that twice and kind of validating the whole idea in general. I wasn't sure through that first year. I thought, we'll see how it goes by whether or not people go for it again. And to those of you who are new to it, thank you also. It's going to be interesting as the year goes forward and as things continue to change to see how the experience kind of evolves for you as we go back to a more normal kind of situation with the club. But I like to do these quarterly if we can, and sometimes it's a happy hour thing with, I don't know, maybe a cocktail demonstration or something like that. This afternoon, it is something a little bit different that we haven't done, at least in this kind of a format. But it's an idea that I like, so I want to have some of your thoughts about it after everything is said and done, to kind of get a closer look on some of the key pieces here at the club, musicians that spend a lot of time performing here and making things work. Before we get Nate out here, I want to just preface everything by saying that although I'm sure you've heard me say some of this at my own shows, it is such an interesting situation that we've been in with Nate the last year, because even though he's a native of the state of Iowa, he was truly making a go of it in New York City the last several years. And when things started to drastically change out there a year ago, he was looking for a place to relocate for an unknown period of time. And we were so lucky to get him here. And I think in some ways the club made him busier than he bargained for. But it has been a true silver lining of this pandemic year to be able to take in so much of his music and selfishly to collaborate with him. He is a fantastic pianist, composer, arranger, and also trumpet player, which some of you may not know. A great band leader, a brilliant mind. Please welcome to the stage Nate Sparks. Yeah. With a fresh cut, too. Am I right?
I suppose.
Well, thank you, and don't worry about the awkwardness of this conversation on stage. It's perfectly comfortable, for me at least. Before we get into too much background, I was wondering if maybe you could take us through a little bit of what that was like, what your situation was like a year ago, as everything was happening, at least from my perspective, quite rapidly in places like New York, and perhaps New York most of all at that time a year ago. What was your work situation like just before the pandemic hit, and then how did it change?
Good question. Well, it was kind of just starting to pick up, but I had a few gigs with my big band lined up, and I wasn't doing a whole lot other than that. I had a lot of writing commissions, and some of those fell through. I mean, it was bad for all musicians. It's no unique situation to me or anybody. It's just we all kind of have suffered through this, and I know you have here. But that's why it's such a great thing that Max is keeping the scene alive here, and that you all are contributing. So thank you all for being here. But yeah, you know, I had a few gigs lined up. We were gonna play at there's a place in Brooklyn. I'm forgetting the name of it. It wasn't Slope Lounge. We played there once, but I think they shut down recently. It was owned by Ravi Coltrane's son or daughter, I think, and Jimmy Garrison's son or daughter. I can't remember their name, but yeah, I don't know if they're even still doing anything. I have been a little bit out of touch with the scene, but yeah, just had some gigs lined up with my big band, and looking forward to that. I was gonna record an album too on my own, which I'd like to get back to at some point, you know, but we're taking things back to normal step by step, so we'll see when.
Was there one of those nights in March, or perhaps it was even, no, I think it was in March when New York started to go dark, where you just realized, oh, this is for real, like it's gonna shut down the scene? Some club that shut down, or?
Well, it was actually, I mean, it was all the delis around around my place. All the small businesses, which clubs are a part of that demographic, right, were just getting shut down left and right. Coercively, you know, and people didn't really have a choice. So yeah, we saw a lot of things getting shut down, and we all kind of figured out that, like, man, this place isn't going to be the same, you know.
So your natural next step was to come back to the jazz mecca of Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad that you did. Originally, you ended up out in New York because of Juilliard, right? But prior to that, you grew up in Iowa. Mm-hmm. And which schools did you attend, and who'd you study with here?
So I was at Southeast Polk High School, and my band director was Jason Girth, great band director. He's doing a lot with the program. It's just, it hasn't stopped improving since I was there, which is great. And Jackie Minier as well. They were my band directors, and then let's see. I participated in the Youth Symphony Academy for a little while on trumpet. Most of my stuff in high school was trumpet. I didn't actually start getting serious about piano until college, but I did take lessons with Jason Danielson when I was young, like in middle school, and that was amazing. I mean, Jason's just one of the best pianists around, you know. He's really yeah, there aren't many people who have just the diversity of skill set that he has. It's really incredible. But I studied with him, and I studied on trumpet with Dave Rezick and Andy Klassen. Those were my main two teachers when I was in high school. And they were both great, all sorts of
Well,
great
that's so cool to hear, because it is so much part of the tradition, of course, that there are layers, there are generational layers to a scene, any scene anywhere, right? But it's a real, it's interesting because I feel like in other disciplines, it's a straight up passing of the torch that happens generationally, and that goes on. But something that's very cool about the jazz tradition is that it is not so automatic like that. You get to grow up and play with the people that teach you, right? And still today here, Jason Danielson and Dave Rezick, Andy Klassen in his own right, are pillars of this music community, while you also get to participate in that with them.
Totally.
I've had my own version of that, and I just think it's an interesting thing about this discipline.
Very, very much so, yeah. I mean, that's like in all corners of the music, too. I mean, out in New York, you have all these masters like Barry Harris, and those guys are still around. And those guys played with Charlie Parker, played with all sorts of great guys. But you know, people seek them out and go to study with them, and they share their stories, and they treat them as just if they're the next, you know, they're just another musician and trying to help everybody out coming up on the scene and everything. And yeah, the mentorship in this music that's a big thing. That's great. We have that here too, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about you coming up and doing piano and trumpet, and hearing, you know, the word prodigy was often attached to your name.
Don't know about that.
It was. Believe me, I know, because it was one of the first things that made me. You're like one of the first people I became aware of in the music scene at all that was younger than me. So it like, you know, the frenemy-ship just started then, well before you were even aware of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh,
Hasn't
yeah.
changed either, has it?
Actually. Okay.
I don't know about that.
No. What I meant to say is, when you were coming up, there was a lot made of your abilities right from the start. Did it feel that way to you as you were going through it, that you had started and it was like, wow, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, it definitely felt like I was on this path. Like, I think it was some point in middle school I kind of decided this is what I'm good at, so I'm going to do it. I was terrible at basketball. That was like the other thing that I did. So
Shoot.
I was bad at that and so much better at this, even though I wasn't amazing at this yet or anything. It was just obvious that was the choice to make. So, yeah, you know, I'm glad I started doing it. I think it might have been a little bit. It was weird because I switched from trumpet to piano when I got to college. I mean, I did trumpet in high school for. The main reason I did it was just so that I had better chances of getting a spot in those big bands, those audition big bands that you do around the country, because there's 4 chairs for that and 1 chair for piano. And there was always sort of the thing looming over me, like, am I actually good, or am I just finding a little bit of like a corner way to do cool stuff, you know, or like a little cheater way to do cool stuff. But I think I figured out the right path once I got out to New York.
Well,
So.
probably the acceptance to Juilliard was a little bit of an indicator that you were actually good.
Maybe.
Did you have your sights set on that program?
That and many others. It was doing those conglomerate band things in high school that made me realize that was a possibility. And it's actually something that I wish we had more of here, was just encouragement for young musicians at any level to try to get good enough to participate in one of those. And actually, it's sad because a lot of them don't exist anymore. Like the Next Generation Jazz Orchestra, which I never made it into, doesn't exist anymore. The Grammy Band, for what I know, it doesn't exist anymore, although there might be something there. Jazz Band of America, I know that might still exist, and there's camps and stuff. But yeah, I really think as like educators here, we could do a lot to encourage students to audition for those things.
I often wonder about stuff like that. With the whole pipeline, being in Iowa, it is still a constant frustration of mine to go out into the larger music scene and see that most of the middle of the country is treated as if it did not exist. I mean, believe me, like trying to get booked as a jazz singer from Des Moines is my cross to bear. Or then adding to it, oh, I own a club in Des Moines, Iowa. That's, I always have to tell a band out of town to like not mention exactly where I'm from so that I can win over the audience first and then confess the whole Des Moines thing. I am a proud ambassador from Des Moines. I'm just saying, speaking of this practically. Anyway, I wonder about really gifted students, such as yourself back in the day, whether that pipeline exists for them, like to know that those bands are out there or what programs to audition for, and whether or not teachers are plugged into that system to even know where to send kids, you know? I think in the Midwest that happens a lot. So what did connect you to even have the awareness to apply to the programs you ended up applying to?
Well, it was actually just the internet. I was scrolling on, I think it was a great trumpet player from Iowa City, Gabe Med, when he was in high school. I figured out, oh, there's this guy that's in Iowa, and he's great. I think he just came up on my recommended videos. And I was scrolling through the comments and seeing stuff about him making these bands that I'd never heard of or whatever. And you know, those programs, it's not like they're the be-all to end-all or anything, but it's a gateway into getting your way out to New York, which is eventually, I think that's just the hub where you find so much information and just so many things that you need to know about being a jazz musician. I think anybody who really wants to learn about jazz music has to spend some time in there, in that city. At least that's how it's been, but who knows? That could change, you know, the way things are going, so.
Well, that's an interesting segue because something that we've touched on a little bit in conversations with each other is this kind of advent of the mid-major scene. And at large, outside of the world of music even, the mid-major city, it's often spoken of as places larger than Des Moines, like Kansas City level, Minneapolis, Indianapolis talks about this a lot. They're having a moment at large culturally because people are sticking around cities a lot more than they used to, rather than, you know, going straight to the major city around them, whether it's Chicago or most of the time Los Angeles or New York. And as a musician, that is interesting because I think there is a bit of a trickle down happening there within smaller places that gives us an opportunity to make special things happen in smaller places that maybe didn't exist before. Do you have your eye on that at all as you spend more time around here, or what do you think about that phenomenon?
I would just love to see it happen and continue to happen because I think I think there's a world of possibility, and it doesn't have. I think that's the way it is now. It's all the good music is out there, but I don't think there's any reason why it couldn't happen here as long as you know, people like you guys who want to hear the music and want to support the music are around, and want to support people learning the music. I really think it starts at education. That's, you know, I've done some teaching. I do a lot of teaching at workshops and clinics and stuff. I have not had the experience, and it's an experience beyond my comprehension of teaching high school or teaching at a public school of any kind. But I do think that those are probably the places where a scene would start. This is my philosophy. It's not informed by great information. It's just a kind of a speculative hypothesis, I guess.
Yeah. Well, along the lines of the genre, the music, and the community around it, was there ever, first of all, do you get incessantly asked, or did you get asked, why jazz?
No.
No?
Well, not really. I just liked it. I guess my dad liked it, you know. That's the case for a lot of people, is they have a parent or a relative that likes it and they get into it that way. And I love the improvisatory spirit of the music, and the fact that you have to be creative. It's unlike classical music, or like classical music traditionally, in that most of early classical music was improvised, but since the recording didn't exist, they had to write it all down for it to be preserved, whereas the case in jazz, we have recordings, so much of the music is improvised, and I think, and that's just such a great part of the music that I was always drawn to, is the improvisation.
Well, it's interesting that people didn't really harp on that with you about what specific music to go after. Were you aware of that being a choice, maybe even a strange choice at a young age, or was it just a given to you that you loved it and wanted to do it?
Yeah, it definitely was. It's esoteric, and that's one of the difficulties, I think, that I'm always battling with in thinking about how to build a scene. It's because this is such an esoteric art form, and we have to negotiate with that. You know, we have to really think about that and decide what that means and how we're going to deal with it, because people, it's always going to be weird to so many people. That, I mean, there are people I know. I work a regular job, and there's just people I know every day that will probably go their whole lives without hearing Louis Armstrong. Maybe, you know, I could be wrong about that. I could be totally off base there, but I think there's some truth there, and I think we really have to come to terms with that and think about how important it is that we really, like, back away from certain things just because other people don't know about them, rather than, you know, in our conversations every day with people, bring up those names and share recordings that you really like and mention what you like about it and you know, just gently throw out the information to people for them to catch on their own. You know, I think
I
that's
completely agree with you, and I've always felt that it was an issue of exposure. I have to believe that because otherwise things get depressing very quick. But I fell in love with the music I love also as a child, and it was not some kind of choice. It was just, it's the earliest stuff I can remember listening to and loving, and that was it. And I have witnessed, both in my own performance and certainly through Noce, that proof of that idea that it is exposure. I, just as a little side note, this club was built around the idea of almost fooling people into listening to jazz, you know? It was like, make people come in because it's really pretty and it's new and it looks modern in a classic setting. And then if the programming is doing its job, if it does what I think it'll do, it will attract more and more people. And there are, in fact, people all the time that come in here who wouldn't describe themselves as jazz fans, who become regulars. That's also why we continue that policy of, and most of the people who work here, Danny just raised his hand. That's why we keep the seats at the bar free too. It's a lot of like low buy-in for people that might be curious, and try to get them in to listen to it. So that's interesting, but I completely agree with you, Nate. I want to get you freed up to play here in a little bit, but I could also do this for a long time. So I'm trying to figure out what I definitely want to ask you when you have to answer. As we get into this year, after going through everything that has happened, what are projects coming back onto your radar with your composing and arranging, or even with the big band? Or is it still kind of like we're stuck in this gray area no one quite knows yet?
You know, I think I might be fooled a little bit by the nice weather, but it really feels like it's time to start making something happen. I don't know. I could be jumping the gun there, but I have gotten a little bit back into writing. I started finishing some old pieces that I wrote, and I'm really excited to put them in front of a band and share them at some point.
Are those arrangements or original pieces?
A little bit of both. The ones I'm thinking about right now are a couple of originals that I did a long time ago and never finished, and I have kind of a drive right now to get back into writing, just 'cause I don't know if we're gonna if it's ever gonna be played, but you know, just to do it. So
it'll get played.
Yeah, someday, hopefully.
Okay, lastly, or maybe lastly, we'll see. You just mentioned that we were throwing things around. I try to be conscious of things that might not be totally, completely understood, even by people who love the music. So you do a lot of arranging and you do a lot of composing, original work. Can you talk about the difference between the two, first of all, like textbook style, and then do you have a preference between the two, and is your process different between the two as a writer?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of that, composing is you're making original material, and that material can come from a variety of different things, but it just has to not sound so identically like something else that it is your own, that you can call it your own. Arranging is you're taking already written material and you're making it into something else. And there's a whole spectrum of how divergent it can be from the original in arranging, but you have all these options. And I generally, when I like to arrange, I like to keep it very accessible to the ear, that you can tell what song it is if you know the song, but have things that I like to do in there of my own that make it my own in a way. And that's the art of arranging. I love doing both. I do both with my band, and I do both for fun with my band. I usually get asked to do it for other projects as an arranger more than a composer. So I do more arranging, but I really just love doing both. And I go back and forth. It kind of depends on what kind of mood I'm in. If I'm really into writing, composing, or arranging.
All right. Well, I wonder, do you want like a couple minutes between this and playing, or are you?
I'm good to start whenever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Nate, I hope you get the chance, if you haven't already, to see this guy lead a big band, because it's truly a great experience, whether it's here at Noce or in New York at some place like Dizzy's. Maybe that'll happen again sometime. But it is like watching someone so clearly, perfectly in their element, and I look forward to having those size of groups back. Today, you're going to hear him as a solo pianist, which is equally thrilling in a different way. But let's go ahead and conclude the interview. Give it up for Nate Sparks, the orator.
Thank you, Max.
Hang on. I'm going to open it up for you.
Sure. Nice.
And maybe adjust this a little so it's not in the way. All right.
Enjoy your drinks.
I will.
Thank you. Whoa. Just to contrast the bright weather outside, that's a dreary song about spring by Tommy Wolfe called Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most. Now for a little brighter one, but still pretty dreary, I'm going to play a Richard Rodgers song called It Might As Well Be Spring. recently we just lost a great pianist named Chick Corea, and I like to pay a tribute to him with this next one, with a few words to go with it. It's a great tune of his, probably my favorite of his, called Tones for Jones Bones. Thank you. That was a great tune we all love to play, of course, called Days of Wine and Roses by Henry Mancini for a film called The Days of Wine and Roses. Another dark song, really, but a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people don't play it like that, which I don't think I did. Anyway, I guess I'll continue with an original. It's a tune I wrote in college called The Lady in the Window. You know, we're all chasing after girls in college. It's just what you do when you're in college. So I wrote a tune about that. And say that again? Yeah, I know. We all love Wayne. He's got the greatest comments of all time. Anyway, this is The Lady in the Window. It's not what you think, I promise. I always like to follow that, thank you, with a tune by a great friend of mine who really started out not so much as a great friend, but a great teacher, going back to that kind of mentorship thing that we have in New York and have here and everywhere else. A lot of people start out as teachers for us and then become our friends, I guess, once we're good enough. But this was my teacher, a guy named Kyle Thade, while I was in New York, and he was a mentor while I was in school. He was an older Juilliard student that graduated long before I was there, but was on the scene doing a lot of stuff, great composer, amazing band leader. You gotta check out his band, the Kyle Thade Dance Party. It's what made me wanna get into big band writing. But he taught me all about that, about big band writing, and just a lot of things about harmony. He got me into Bach, J.S. Bach, and Duke Ellington, and just all these great musicians that I may not have ever checked out or known about had it not been for studying with him. So this is a song by Kyle Thade that he recorded, and I recorded with him on an album that we made a year ago that they'll be releasing soon. We'll be releasing soon, I suppose. And this is a tune he wrote called The Thing I'd Never Say. Yeah, trying to see what we got on time. Okay.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, all right. I guess I timed this a little bit poorly. I'll do a little quick one. This is a tune by Victor Young, right? I Want to Be Happy?
Yes.
And that's just what I want to be. I want to be happy. As do we all.